I'm here with the host of the Duran and America's comedian Kurt Metzger, and we're talking today about Joe Biden's administration demonizing half the country as extremists because they don't agree with him. You think I'm kidding? Here is his press secretary saying if you don't agree with the majority of Americans, you're an extremist.
And again, we see majority of Americans who disagree. And so when you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
So then you're an extreme. If you're not where the majority of Americans are, according to Joe Biden's press secretary, you're an extremist. You're an extremist. By the way, they call her the screwdriver because she just loosened the shit out of that definition of what an extremist is. When you got to stretch the meaning of a politically loaded word, that's what you call the screwdriver. Seriously, though, she makes a fair and well thought out point, and that's why I've said for years, we need to start rounding up the Amish because they do not think like the rest of us. They're very extreme.
They're in buggies, Jimmy.
I know. I'm with her. I'm with her, you lady. I just point out who the extremists are to me, and that don't agree with the majority of Americans. Point them out, because it would be your boss. Because the majority of Americans, almost 70%, want to legalize marijuana. Joe Biden doesn't want to legalize marijuana. He would be the extremist. Let's look at another one. How about 69% of voters support Medicare for all? That's from a conservative publication. 69% of voters support Medicare for all. Joe Biden doesn't. He would be an extremist. He should be rounded up. He should be kicked out of politics. Most Americans support the $15 minimum wage. Joe Biden does not. Joe Biden does not. So that would make him an extremist. Oh, I forgot to do all these fucking jokes. God damn it. Why didn't you remind me?
I thought, well, you had it in your hands. So
I had it in my hands. I fucking forgot. By the way, let's go back to this one. So House votes to legalize marijuana despite Biden's opposition. Look at that Proud Boy, Boogaloo Boy going against the majority of Americans. Hey, Biden, just because your son is somehow the most successful drug addict in the history of whoever lived, it doesn't mean the rest of us can't hold our shit. Okay. And where's slides. So here, Joe Biden says he would veto Medicare for all as president. Why doesn't he just grow a full beard and lie on his side in a cave next to an AK-47 as he says this shit? Because that is extreme. That is extreme.
The shake?
Okay, let's keep going. So here she keeps saying more. It's because this comes up a couple of times. This came up last week. Watch this.
Thinks that there is an extremist threat to our democracy. The president has been clear as he can be on that particular piece when we talk about a democracy, when we talk about our freedoms. The way that he sees is the MAGA Republicans are the most energized part of the Republican Party. This is an extreme threat to our democracy, to our freedom, to our rights.
When the president is talking about preserving the soul of the nation and his threats to democracy, he's not referring to those individuals. He's talking about Republican leadership.
Well, let me be very clear. It's not just Republican leadership. It's not just that blanket, right?
It's people. It's regular fucking voters. It's not just because that guy you're calling she's thinking about Americans. Yes.
Talking about an extreme portion, an extreme part of the party.
Extreme? You mean extreme? You mean like all the people who voted for Donald Trump? That would be 71 million Americans? You mean that extreme part of the party?
Well, they're even more energized now.
They're so energized. Here's Joe.
Brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe. If you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun.
Really, Joe? You need an F-15? Because I could have sworn a bunch of scrappy Islamist fundamentalists beat us so decisively that we left their country and most of our shit behind. So I guess, no, you don't need an F-15 is what I'm saying. Why would he even fucking say that?
They couldn't even defeat Joe Rogan.
Why would you even say that? These right wingers, they don't have an F-15. What? I don't know.
This is probably about guns. That's probably why.
Okay.
Because that's like that stupid argument that, like, what are you going to be able to fight the government if you have your like?
Mm-hmm.
What are they worried about it then?
Well, I used to always say that too. I would say the government's going to have a bigger gun than you. That is true, but I bet there'd be a lot of people in the government who would be afraid of getting picked off by guys with guns and rifles.
I mean, I think that's the only reason, like, that German lady could talk that way that she did about the voters. Like, they don't have weapons
because they don't fear their voters.
Like, what are they? I mean, whatever the voters say, I'm not. Can you imagine someone saying that, like, in those words?
Yeah, whatever the voters want, it doesn't matter. Yeah, well, Dick Cheney and Bill Kristol would say that on fucking Morning Joe Ball all the time. Doesn't matter what the voters want. We got to do the Iraq War. Doesn't matter.
There's a lot of gun owners watching.
Let me bring in my host from the Duran. Do you think that Joe Biden is an extremist? I do.
Absolutely. I mean, an extremist who is extremely intolerant of everybody who doesn't agree with him. Yeah. Now, the fundamental point, I mean, one of the things is he talks about democracy all the time, but his understanding of democracy is very different from my own. My understanding of democracy is that you have a diversity of opinions. I mean, mainstream people outside the mainstream are sometimes the most useful people. Tom Paine, people, the anti-slavery movement, all sorts of people like this. Well, that's where political energy and movement in a democracy comes. And you need the civil rights movement, at time. And you need people like that. You need argument, you need debate, you need the people to be offered choices and alternatives and views. We talk about only a mainstream. Well, first of all, who defines the mainstream? Is it President Biden who tells us what the mainstream is?
I think it's the Atlantic.
It's ultimately his opinions, the opinions of the group that he represents, the oligarchy. They are the people who are mainstream. And everyone else is a extremist. Well, that is not a democratic position. That's a very authoritarian one and a very extreme one.
It is an extreme position.
It's ironic that Joe Biden's position on extremists is extreme.
Well, Alexander, I suppose you think the left shouldn't absolutely despise the working classes either.
So, Alex, anything you have to say on this?
I mean, I thought that it was cool to think different in the U.S. Didn't Apple have a whole commercial segment about thinking different? But Jimmy, they don't have a solution for anything. They don't want to explain how they got us into this mess either. They don't want to talk about that either. But they are telegraphing exactly what they want to do to us. You can't fault them. We're not going to be able to sit back 6 months from now and just sit around and say, I didn't see it coming. I mean, they are telling us where they want to take us.
And where they seems like they're going to take us is everybody's going to be in poverty, reliant on some superstructure that they're setting up for energy and food. And is that a conspiracy theory to think that?
No. They're telling us. I don't know, Alexander. You want to wait? I mean, this my opinion is that's what they're telling us.
Would it be hidden?
This is what they're telling us.
So what do you see coming when they say it's coming? Oh, did they freeze? They froze for a second.
What we're going to see is an awful lot more attempts to use the institutions of the state against people who challenge the position of the political class and the oligarchy behind it. I mean, that's what it amounts to. As I said, if the challenge comes from people who are on the left or people who are defined as on the right. It really doesn't matter. It's the oligarchy which is in control, and it's going to attack anybody who challenges its position, and they're going to call them extremists, and they have all the machinery of the state now working for them. That's basically what I see, and it's very disturbing and very frightening. It's not inevitable. It can be resisted. There are mechanisms, I think, still in society to resist it, but that's the real challenge, I think.
And it's just amazing to hear them say things like this while they're murdering a journalist for doing journalism and exposing war crimes, and they're doing it right out in the open, and everyone pretends like Joe Biden isn't a murderer of journalists.
Well, this is absolutely true. I mean, I should say I've attended the Assange hearings in London. Some of the people who are involved in that case are my friends. I know an awful lot about that, and I have to say, no, Assange, it has been taken through an absolutely grotesque legal process in London, is threatened with extradition to the United States, even though the case against him is chaotic and makes no real rational sense at all. The reason he's done that is because he's acted as a journalist should, as a reporter should, and he has exposed the kind of crimes that have been committed by the US government, by the British government, by other Western governments, but primarily, of course, and first and foremost, the US government, as it pursues its foreign policies and its other policies around the world. And that's the entirety of the case. Joe Biden obviously has no problem with that. Neither, it seems, does the government of Britain.
Come see us do stand-up comedy in Spokane, Tacoma, Virginia Beach, Richmond, Arlington, San Jose, Miami, West Palm Beach. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets and become a premium member while you're there.